Hey guys, so if you remember a little while ago we looked at the difference between a good, average and a bad AD carry player, which got an amazing response by the way. So today we're going to look at the same thing for the mid lane. I'm going to link the AD carry one down in the description, but these are really key areas you're going to need to climb playing mid lane. But remember as well to comment below with what you scored. These videos always take me ages, so if you end up enjoying it, I'd really appreciate letting me know. Leave a like or a comment or share it with your friends. But anyway, let's jump into the first area, which is roaming and using your minimap. This is really about your awareness. So do you even know that you have a minimap in the bottom right or left, I guess, and how much you impact the rest of the map, how much you move around. Straight up, roaming is something you almost have to do now in Season 7, I think, or at least it's like the easiest way to climb for sure. So bad players do not roam at all, right? They stay mid lane and they farm basically the entire game. You might have like a 25 CS lead, you might actually be winning your lane, but in my opinion, in the current Season 7 meta, that still makes you bad at this category. You're basically in your own little bubble, right? Focused on yourself, what you're doing, but have no real idea what is going on in other lanes or the jungle. The typical kind of player who moans at their team while they're not really moving. Now, an average mid laner is going to be trying to use the push and roam strat that has become really popular this season, but you still won't really be using your minimap very much. You push your wave, you duck out of vision, and then you look at where you're going to roam. Sound familiar, right? Often though, in this tier, you're going to be roaming because you have push, not because there is necessarily a good opportunity in another lane. The success rate of a roam is probably about 50-50. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and you end up losing CS in your lane before you can get back to your tower. Often you'll be thinking of roaming only after you've actually dealt with that wave, so you don't want to miss out on that precious CS, right? That's the most important thing, we all know that. That was sarcasm, by the way. There are things more important than the CS. Also, still map awareness is pretty bad. You might have a rough idea of where your jungler is, but that's probably about it. So a good mid laner, this is where you're going to try and step up each aspect we just talked about. You plan your roams as you're pushing, you're paying attention to the minimap and know roughly what's happening in lanes, and you're also reacting to fights now. Breaking each of those down, you plan the roams, right? You're thinking a wave or two in advance. Okay, push this and then I can roam afterwards. You already know where you're going to and why. More than likely, the enemy is pushing their lane. That is the most common reason to go down there. You save those 5 to 10 seconds wondering where to go after you pushed, and you have better roams. This is also where you might start to trap the enemy mid laner. You fake a roam, you wait for them to follow thinking they're going bot lane, and then you kill them. You're also now paying attention to the minimap. This is the next part. Because you're looking at this between waves or at the corner of your eye, you'll likely have a better idea of who is pushing and who to roam to, if the enemy jungler shows up or where he last was, which is really important, and also if a fight breaks out. Not only does this make you roam better, but the bigger thing is you move when the fights happen. If the enemy jungler shows bot lane, for example, right, you can roam and turn that fight around, or you stand a chance to. Those swings are probably the easiest way to win a solo queue game, no doubt. This is what a really good roamer looks like. They have the map awareness to notice when fights happen and to move straight away to get there in time to do something. I mean, sometimes you won't get there in time, so you turn around, but if it lasts long enough, you'll be there first, you'll turn it around, and you'll get some easy kills. I know there's quite a lot of information for one area, but you guys said last time you wanted more on how to get to those good tiers, so there you go. Area number 2, your lane phase. This is a massive area, but we're going to put it into a few of the most important differences for carrying games. So skill shots, aggression, and trading in CS. Bad players with skill shots will throw them wherever, whenever, maybe backwards, who knows. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. They'll randomly go aggressive and they either trade or CS, but honestly mostly just CS until the enemy tries to fight them. So for the average one, the skill shots now, we're going to throw them at the person at least, which is a good start. Hitting them more, but it's still kind of easy to dodge away from them if the enemy is trying to. The aggression side is a bit more sensible. You're picking better fights, so normally when you have the cooldowns and they don't, or when you know you can kill them, this is probably where most people will fit into, I think. Like, even at master tier, mid laners will suffer from this same thing. They are way too aggressive and they don't respect other factors in the game. They're only looking at whether they can kill somebody or not. Trading CS, they're starting to do both now, but it's normally one and then the other afterwards. You'll also see a lot of players just push and not trade, even though keeping the wave alive is actually a good way to force fights. So good mid players then, the skill shots start to become difficult to dodge even if the enemy is trying to. This is the biggest difference. It's normally because you've got them in a position where you know they're going to stand, like when they CS. A good mid laner will throw skill shots out as the enemy walks forward to CS because they're going to stand in a very predictable place and are focusing on that CS, not on you. This is actually the easiest way to take your skill shots to the next level, honestly, and stop missing a lot in the lane phase. They're also going to start to realize that it's not just a 1v1 lane anymore, and there's a good and bad time to go aggressive. This is also where planning comes in a lot more. The most common is the level 6 kill, to be honest. This is the best example I can give you. At level 5, you poke them down a bit, but you leave them at like 40% health. You know you could fight them again, maybe you're going to kill them, probably force them to base, but you could also wait until you're level 6 and get an easy kill with your ultimate. That is the kind of thinking that we're looking for from a good mid laner. Again, this is where trading goes to another level. You CS and you trade with a skill shot, for example, making sure you do both at the same time. It's also where trading becomes less about can I do this and more into is it worth me doing this? You could throw REQs at somebody over and over, but that means you can't push as hard, plus you're using your mana. A really good mid laner will be thinking about the mana to health cost of each trade. I know you might be thinking I'm taking the piss, but they actually do this. Sometimes it's better not to trade and save some mana. Sometimes it's better to use your mana to chip away at the health bar instead. Again, it's all about your plan. What is that trade going to get you in 2 minutes time? Now next up, the next category is the junglers. We hinted at this before, but mid lane is not a 1v1 lane this season. It's almost always a 2v2. Bad mid laners, as you can probably guess, have no idea where the enemy jungler is, and they don't really care either. They play the lane and that's it. An average mid will have a bit more awareness, but still not really that fussed about where they are, to be honest. They might ward, but likely just to the side of their lane and try to react if they come in. That's about it. They're still going to die to a lot of ganks, but survive more than the bad tier at least. And your jungler doesn't really factor into anything you do at this stage either. This one is quite a big jump, but the good mid laner is actively going to try and play based on where the enemy jungler is, knowing getting ganks can actually shift their lane into the enemy's favor really quickly. That means you place deeper wards, like better map awareness to know where they were last, like where they last ganked. Keeping track of buff timings especially is a very easy way of doing this because they normally always take buffs on cooldown. It's also about your jungler though as well. If he's setting up bot lane, he cannot help you if you get ganked, right? Plus it might mean that when he does fight, it'll probably be a good idea to roam down like we said earlier. If he's farming chickens or he's right next to mid, then you know you can play more aggressive. Even if you do get ganked, you have that backup side you can run to. That's kind of risk-free aggression, right? Knowing you cannot be punished because your jungler is right there. It's about picking the times to fight, not just going in blind. Normally I leave items until the very last one actually in these videos, but mid lane itemization is so important because you're the mid game powerhouse. That means the first 2 or 3 items you buy are really key to how well you're going to do in the game, because that is where you have a massive impact compared to other roles. So a bad player, this probably applies to all roles actually. They look up a build on Mobify and now they build that every single game. An average one looked up a few builds, they have a rough idea of why you're building that item, but like there's still not much thought behind it. This is the type of player who would panic and buy Zhonya's and Banshees in a very hard game, when actually that leaves you with no damage, so it doesn't really matter if you die anyway. It'd also be the type of player who is buying like Morello and Deathcap in a hard game against Zed, then wonder why they are dying under their tower every single time and blaming the rest of their team. A good mid laner though will adapt their build to what they need in the game, but also have a good understanding of what each item is going to be good at. This would mean getting an arm guard against Zed or getting a Negatron against Syndra, but not necessarily actually upgrading that into anything until later if they don't need to. It could be as small as buying Lost Chapter and then Banshees against a Syndra you're losing pretty hard to. You need the mana regen to be able to deep push and lane, otherwise sure, like you have some magic resist and a shield but no ability to play the game basically. It's also about building what you think you'll need in 10 minutes, not what you think you need now. Like you might not need Magic Pen right now at this second. If the enemy team has 3 Negatron cloaks in their inventory though, in 10 minutes they'll probably have upgraded that into 4 MR items and then you will. That kind of thing. It's also about building defense only as a last resort for a mid laner. If you do not need it, do not buy it. You really do want the damage to carry mid game unless you have no choice. So don't stack defense thinking it doesn't really matter. Next one, win conditions or the mid game. So mid lane is really diverse, right? There are champions that are good early, good team fighters, good late game, good assassins. So many different styles that mean different ways to win a game, which you do need to know. A bad player will have no idea what a win condition even is probably, but they will know roughly what the champion is good at. So like Syndra is good at bursting people. They are more reacting to the game anyway and playing along. They're not really steering it into a direction that would be good for them, if that makes sense. An average mid laner will have a better idea of what their champion is good at, but they aren't really that proactive in the game. They know what they're supposed to do a bit more, even if it's like semi-subconscious, but they're not likely always playing to that win condition. So Fizz, for example, is 10 times more dangerous if he roams and gets kills. They probably know that, but they might not always roam anyway. Orianna is much better grouped up, but they don't always try and get the team to group up mid-game. Or like LeBlanc is really dangerous when she's moving around mid-game and trying to catch people alone, but sometimes will just farm and chill instead. This is where that good player comes in though. They know the best way to win and they are trying to play to that every single game, normally adapting to the team they have. Sometimes your teams are bad, sometimes they're good. Push and roam is the easiest example, right? Talon, Talia, Ari kind of as well. The game plan will be to shove the wave and then disappear on the map, and that's what they're going to do all of the time. The Xerath, for example, is different, like would be more lane focused, not roam a whole ton, but then group up mid game and just poke everybody down to win that way. Champions are very different, but knowing how they win is really important. Finally then, very quickly, team fighting. This is linked to what we just talked about, but mid laners can have a massive impact in team fights as a lot of them are AoE or burst spells. A bad one is probably going to get caught to start with most likely, not sure where to stand or who to focus because they aren't sure really what their job is in the team fight anyway. An average one has a better grasp of what they're supposed to do and what part they have to play in that team fight, whether that's diving into the back line or staying back and throwing in spells constantly like an Orianna would. Positioning and focus are going to be better, but not always spot on because they're not really thinking about it. They kind of know what they're supposed to be doing, but they aren't always able to do it. Normally that comes down to being in the wrong place at the start of the fight. Now a good one will know what to do and how they actually want to achieve that in a fight as well. That is the main difference. They thought out the fight in their heads before it happens, or at least in some way. They kind of know what they need to avoid. They know who they want to target and where they're going to have to stand to be able to do their job. The best example I can give you is, you know, in some games you have like a big ultimate combo, right? You're losing and you finally get a fight where everyone does their job, like Vi ultimates the AD carrier and Orianna ults on top and stuff. That is really what we're aiming for here, but to be more consistent and to always be doing their job. This is partly about having the mechanics to be able to do that job, but more honestly about the knowledge of what that job is supposed to look like. They'll be better offensively and defensively in fights though. Like, they're less likely to die at the start because they know what to avoid, and they're more likely to have an impact because, well, they're not actually dead to start with and they are focusing the right person. So I hope you guys enjoyed this look at the mid lane. This took me ages, but I think it covers the main points pretty well, and remember to let me know what you scored down below. But for now, we'll leave you with the robots.